Saludos a toda la afición de la lucha libre. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante del equipo de Lucha Libre Online. Y tenemos el enorme privilegio de presentarles a nuestro invitado en la noche de hoy de Estados Unidos para el mundo. Ex campeón mundial en parejas de WCW, ex campeón de la televisión de WCW de igual manera, ex superestrella de la WWE y una superestrella que todavía se mantiene activa en el circuito independiente. Damas y caballeros, Crowbar, man, it is such an honor to have you here as our guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's really cool.
Thank you for being here with us. We wanted to start this interview with how did you got hooked up with the pro wrestling industry? I mean, which was the match, the rivalry, or the wrestler that engaged you enough so you can do this or wish to do this for the rest of your life?
I was always a huge fan. I remember being a small kid. My brother was 10 years older than me. My dad and him would watch wrestling at night, and it would come on at like 12 o'clock at night here, and I was supposed to be in bed. And we lived in a little house, but my bedroom, if the pillow was here, if I snuck down this end, I could see down the hallway, I could see the TV in the living room. So I would watch as they were watching. And I wasn't supposed to be, but I loved it. And then as I got older, I just became more and more of a fan. And it's not fashionable to say at all. It's not something that they say is professional. I still, to this day, I think I'm the biggest wrestling fan going. I love wrestling. I enjoy it. I love watching it. I like watching it professionally, but I like watching it as a fan as well. I've never lost that. And I think that's why I still do it. I'm a huge fan. So I would watch it as I was growing up and becoming a bigger fan and a bigger fan. And it was also something that I bonded with my father through. We watched wrestling. And as I got older, it just was starting to come to a point where just being a fan wasn't enough. And I started to like it more and more. Then I saw, if I had to say one match that really jumped out and said, I really want to be a wrestler, I always say Ric Flair, Terry Funk at the New York Knockout, the I Quit match. And I always say that was hardcore before hardcore was even a term. It was a street fight. They used chairs. They used the announcer's table. They used the mats. They pulled up the mats. They used the guardrails. I like hardcore, but I don't like garbage wrestling. And I get how some people like that, but that's cool. But I like it when the weapons naturally occur around a ringside. You use the environment. The guardrails are there. Now you have the tables underneath the ring, and I accept that. That's just evolved. That's where they are there. But way back when, they used the announcers' tables. They would throw them in the ring, and they would put people through them if they were to use them. Now the announcers' tables are these giant things. You can never throw them in the ring. They're just too big. So not chairs, the tables under the ring is fine. But that match was a fight. They still wrestled in it, and they used naturally occurring weapons around ringside. And that really hooked me. That was the match, I say, that really hooked me to say, wow, I really want to do this.
So I'm going to translate that to Spanish now. Crowbar comienza a ver lucha libre cuando su papá veía lucha libre, pero él no estaba permitido ver lucha libre en su familia porque era un niño todavía. Entonces él se escondía y la podía ver desde lejos, desde donde su padre estaba viéndola, del área del sótano. Y allí entonces de esa manera fue que se enganchó con la industria. Pero hubo una lucha que en particular dijo, wow, esto cambió mi perspectiva, quiero hacer esto por el resto de mi vida. Y fue Ric Flair contra Terry Funk en New York, aquel I Quit match que también fue un hardcore match, que tuvo silla, que tuvo lucha, pura lucha, que levantaban el área del mat, que levantaron también la parte de los protectores, que utilizaron mesa, que desbarataron todo. Dos personas que brindaron un excelente contenido en aquel momento dado e hicieron que este niño en aquel momento dado como Crowbar se enganchara en este producto. Menciona que le gusta la lucha hardcore, pero no la lucha hardcore basura, no el garbage hardcore match, sino un hardcore match en donde puedas ver cualquier tipo de contenido, que puedas ver lucha, que puedas ver sangre, que puedas ver violencia, pero que todavía conserve la esencia de la lucha libre. Let's jump a little bit and fast forward a little bit in time. You had a stint with WWE for 2 years, from 1997 to 1999, where you have multiple matches. First of all, how was your experience while wrestling with WWF? It wasn't under the name Crowbar. As far as we know, it's Devin Storm, correct?
Yes, it was. So that time they had started up their light heavyweight division. And I had known Jim Cornette from all the independent shows on the Northeast, and they needed guys. And it was a very cool and strange time for me because at that time I was full-time in school. So they would find certain shows that they would want to put me on. I would have to clear it with my teachers, my professors. This was long before online classes. You had to be in school. So I would get all my assignments that would be due. I got them done in advance, and I would fly out and I would do these matches. And it was a crazy and exciting time. And right around that time too, I was also doing the Saturday night show for WCW, going back and forth. And it was a crazy, exciting time. I had no social life at all. I would go to school during the week, and I would train at the gym at night, and I would fly out to these shows, and that was everything. It was crazy, but it was wonderful.
So I'm going to translate that to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, un joven Crowbar decide ser luchador y fue Jim Cornette a través de los shows independientes que le da su primera oportunidad de llegar a la WWF en aquel momento dado como parte de la división Light Heavyweight que se estaba construyendo en aquel momento. Si no recuerdan, Taka Michinoku fue parte de ella, S.A. Rios, Gilbert, entre muchísimas otras superestrellas, pues Crowbar fue parte de esa división Light Heavyweight. Pero menciona algo muy importante, y es que cuando comienza su vida en la industria de la lucha libre, él estaba en la escuela todavía, y no eran clases online, tenías que ir, estar en la escuela, you need to be at school, en presencia en aquel momento dado para poder continuar aquel grado. Y entonces él por las mañanas y las tardes iba a la escuela, por las noches iba al gym, después de la noche, la evenings, como él menciona, y directamente iba a luchar. Entonces no tenía esa vida social, pero sí aprovechaba su tiempo completamente. How can you describe, I mean, you were there for 2 years in different moments, but so far, with your experience, how can you describe at that moment of the late 90s, the creative process in WWF back then? Who were the producers that usually were in charge of your matches, specifically the light heavyweight division?
We were really just, as I felt, we were filler. You know, they wanted those, like the car crash matches and all this wild stuff. We were there to provide it. I really didn't have that big of an interaction with creative. You know, we were just there to do some wild stuff. So it was just basically, you're working with this person. We want this much time. This is kind of the flavor we would like. And it was pretty simple. They really, I don't think a lot was invested creatively in the light heavyweight stuff. It was more or less go out there and give these guys some of the wild action like they're seeing down in WCW with the Lucha guys and the cruiserweights.
So I'm going to translate this to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, ellos eran, vamos a decirlo de esta manera, como menciona, pues eran relleno, eran luchadores de desarrollo que utilizaban para darle el impulso a los talentos que ya estaban establecidos. Estuvo 2 años de esa manera haciendo múltiples trabajos para WWF en aquel momento dado. Y entonces WWF lo que quería era que pudieran ver lo mismo que estaba en la WCW con los Cruiserweights, pero tenerlo en la WWF con esta división Light Heavyweight que estaban implementando, y posteriormente llegar a donde lo conocemos hoy día. Fast forward a little bit in time, one more time. You signed a developmental deal with WCW back in 1999. How did you get that opportunity, and who was the person, you know, to give you the call?
Well, during college, I worked part-time for WWE for a while. I did some ECW at that time, and also WCW. ECW was real easy because it was mainly on the East Coast. I live on the East Coast, so I really didn't have to fly anywhere. We would go as far north as maybe like a Boston and as far south as Baltimore. And I lived in New Jersey, so it was all driving. I would finish up class on Friday. I would try to get out early and then drive wherever I had to go. WCW, WWE was more nightly things. Like I had one match on Nitro with Conan, which was great. I was probably at that time, I'm just going to think off the top of my head, 23 years old, maybe. Mind blown that I'm in there with Conan on Nitro, and Eddie Guerrero, guys like that. So that was part-time. WWE was part-time. And when I was there, I became good friends with Dallas Page, New Jersey guy as well. And he said to me, it's great that you're here. It's great that you're working for Vince and you're doing all these things. At that time, this dynamic has changed now completely. But at that time, he said, if you keep doing these job guy roles, you're always gonna, and they gave me competitive matches, but for the most part, I would keep getting beat. He goes, you have to get out of that typecast. If you keep doing this, you're going to get locked in there. So it would be best for you to go, finish school, get in shape, hone your craft. And then when you're done, give me a call, see what I could do for you. Send me some pictures later, some video, blah, blah, blah. So I went back to school. I graduated. I went to work in a hospital for about a year. And then Dallas Page was doing a charity show in New Jersey in Asbury Park. I met up with him there. I had gotten in shape. My hair was dark now, not blonde. I sent him some videos, and fast forward, he is ultimately the guy that opened the door for me.
So I'm going to translate this to Spanish. En aquel momento dado, Crowbar estaba trabajando a tiempo parcial para la WWF. Trabajaba también para ECW en la costa este de los Estados Unidos, que les era un poco más sencillo porque estaba ahí al lado. Y trabajaba también para WCW en el territorio de desarrollo de ellos. Su primera lucha fue en el 99 en Nitro contra Conan. Entonces, como mencioné, era fanático de la lucha libre, además de ser luchador, y todavía es fanático, al igual que todo el mundo que todavía permanece en esta industria. Y menciona que en aquel momento dado, Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, es quien le dice a él, si sigues haciendo este tipo de trabajos constantemente, no vas a poder salir de este rol. Mi recomendación es que te vayas de WCW, termines la escuela, termines la universidad, te pongas en forma y vengas y me des una llamada, me envías fotos y me envías videos. Y eso fue lo que hizo. Se fue, terminó su carrera universitaria, se pinta el pelo, ya no estaba de rubio, he wasn't blonde, ahora va a tener pelo negro directamente, y entonces llama a DDP y el resto es historia. So DDP es la persona quien le abre la puerta. You were part of a pretty particular faction at that point in WCW with David Flair. You also were with Daphne. How was your experience working with both of them?
It was really good. I was first doing the Saturday night show as Devon Storm, dark hair Devon Storm, and they were grooming me to be a kind of aggressive cruiserweight. They were little by little building me that I would eventually go to Thunder and Nitro and be this new cruiserweight force to, new cruiserweight guy. At that same time, what was happening was David Flair was this crazy guy going around hitting people, stalking women. And for whatever reason, people loved David Flair. He was drawing a rating. When they would go through the quarter hours, people were tuning in to see what David was doing. The only problem was at that time, David, not a strong in-ring performer. So they put him with Daphne, which added another layer, but the wrestling was still the problem. So they come up with the idea, we'll put David in a tag team with somebody that's competent. The partner will do more of the wrestling and David. And so they made us into a tag team. They gave me the name Crowbar. David Flair was hitting people with the crowbar. They shot a scene where they met me in a gas station. I tell them my name is Crowbar, and in some crazy mental world, we lock and we become friends. And the next week we win the tag titles. It was crazy.
I'm going to translate this incredible story to Spanish. En aquel momento dado empieza en WCW como Devon Storm con el pelo negro. Posteriormente estaba David Flair generando un buen rating en aquel momento dado porque la gente cuando veían los números iba semana tras semana y estaban sintonizando y viendo lo que estaba pasando con David Flair. En aquel momento dado hostigando mujeres y haciendo distintas cosas bajo su personaje. Entonces, todo el mundo estaba pendiente a ver qué iba a pasar con David Flair y de repente David Flair no era un buen competidor en el cuadrilátero, en aquel momento estaba verde todavía, lo parean con Daphne y pasa algo bien interesante. Él le daba con un crowbar a la gente en aquel momento dado, llegan a una estación de gasolina en una promo que grabaron y se encuentra con este individuo, con anteriormente Devon Storm, ahora Crowbar, y entonces en su mente, por algún motivo dado, eso pareaba perfectamente y así fue que terminaron haciendo equipo y una semana después ganan los campeonatos mundiales en parejas de WCW. And that's actually our next question. You won the WCW Tag Team Championships along with David Flair. You also won the Cruiserweight Championship along with Daphne. How do you felt at the exact moment that you captured?
And the hardcore belt.
And the hardcore belt to the three of them.
Don't forget that one.
How did you felt at that exact moment when you captured main gold in one of the main companies in the whole world? I mean, the fan that grew watching pro wrestling without his dad knowing at that point finally achieved the dream. How did you felt?
Okay. And again, most guys in wrestling won't say this because it's not professional and it's not fashionable. I love this stuff. I still love this stuff. Just getting the opportunity to go to WCW was incredible. I was having a magnificent time on the Saturday night show. I had a great time years before when I worked with Conan and Eddie Guerrero, and I did the light heavyweight with Taka Michinoku and all that type of stuff. And then I get a call. I was being groomed, as I said, as a cruiserweight guy, which I was very happy with and was great. But now I get plucked from the Saturday night show, and I get a character, a person that's going to be not just a straight up wrestler. You're going to be a wrestling character. And not only that, the first time this character debuts in the ring, winning the tag titles. And I was Chris Ford, the professional wrestler there, but I was also Chris Ford, the little kid, and my mind was blown. And I was going around the back, and I'm good friends with Bill DeMott, and I'm good friends with Dallas Page. And I remember walking in, and Mike Tenay and Scott Hudson was there, who were very good to me on Saturday night on the commentary. And I was wearing a Champion shirt, you know, the brand.
Yeah.
Champion. I don't even know if it's still a brand or not, but they go, "Oh, you're wearing that shirt. How'd you know?" I said, how'd I know what? He goes, "Oh, you're winning the tag belts." And I go, "Get out of here." So that happens. I tell Dallas, I tell Bill DeMott, I go, "They're putting the tag belts on me tonight. This is crazy." And they go, "Don't sell it. There's a lot of guys that have been here a long time and they're probably not happy that the new guy is getting a tag strap tonight with David Flair. Be professional, keep in your excitement." And so I had to smile and be giddy, but I had to hold it all inside so that nobody could see it. But I was like a kid in a candy store. It was pretty awesome.
So I'm going to say this in Spanish. En aquel momento dado, Crowbar gana los campeonatos en pareja de la WCW. Además fue campeón hardcore y campeón cruiserweight de WCW. Pero gana los títulos en pareja con David Flair. ¿Cómo se sintió aquel niño que en algún momento dado veía lucha libre sin que su papá viera que sabía que veía lucha libre? Pues entonces él llega allí a WCW y estaba Mike Tenay en aquel momento dado con otros anunciadores y le dicen: "Oh, mira, tienes la camisa de Champion. ¿Cómo lo supiste?" ¿Cómo supe que esta noche ganan los campeonatos en pareja hoy con David Flair? Se queda como que, no puede ser, vete, esto está fastidiándome. Y la mente explotó completamente. Habla con Bill DeMott, que era de sus mejores amigos allá. Habla con Dallas Page y le dicen: "No digas eso. Mantén completamente tu emoción por dentro, conténla, siempre sé profesional porque eres nuevo y están dándote los títulos en pareja con alguien que lleva tiempo aquí, que es David Flair, y eso a mucha gente le puede saber mal". Así que ese niño por dentro estaba emocionado, pero el luchador también se sentía muy, muy afortunado por la oportunidad. I want to actually speak to you about that exact topic.
A lot of guys will try to play it off and they'll be professional. They say belts don't matter. If you're out there and a company's putting a title on you, they're clearly expressing a confidence in what you can do and what you can do for the company. So that should be exciting professionally. And all these guys, if there's just the smallest bit of fans still living in there, if they say it's not exciting, they're lying. I just don't understand it. It has to be. So that's just my take. It was really cool. And I think professionally, and even just as if you have that fan in you still, it means something and it's cool and it's important, and that's it.
It is important because the company has that, as mentioned, the confidence in you, but they are investing in you. They are going into the long run. I wanted to speak to you about David Flair specifically. Why do you think he didn't reach the success he was born to have?
Athletically, he just didn't have that same prowess as his dad. I don't think he wanted to do it like his dad, but I think he was given a great opportunity at a young age to make good money that most kids his age would have no ability to make. So what would he say? No. So, and he really tried. When I met him, they first told me before we even met that I would be working with Ric Flair's son. And I'm saying, oh my God, I've never met him before. Is he going to be stuck up, going to be conceited? And I met David, super nice, nicest guy in the world. I met Daphne, super sweetheart, nice. And honestly, we were three kids just having fun. And the character, being a crazy character, you could do whatever you want. And it worked. It didn't matter. You could be crazy. You could laugh. You could be angry. And we all just collectively had a fun time together. But we also learned. I was able to show Shannon, Daphne, her Hurricanrana, tornado DDTs and all kinds of stuff. And there was a point when I worked against David where we had a little fight with each other and we trained often. So we got to do maybe one or two matches together, and no 5-star match, but I would say a very solid, good match that we put some thought into. That if you went back to when we first started, I think people wouldn't think that kind of a match. We worked and he evolved. He got better. He was never going to be a 5-star wrestler, but he worked hard at the opportunity that he was given. And I have nothing but good things to say about David. He was a lot of fun to work with.
So I'm going to translate that to Spanish. Le pregunto por qué motivo tal vez David Flair no alcanza el éxito que nació para tener. Su padre Ric Flair. Entonces él menciona que no tenía atléticamente lo necesario en aquel momento dado. Era un luchador bueno, pero no era Ric Flair, obviamente. Entonces cae ese peso sobre su hombro. Pero principalmente David era un niño, era joven, era extremadamente joven, vio una buena cantidad de dinero, se dedicaba a esto y trabajaba, pero tal vez su corazón no estuvo en esto. Él tuvo la oportunidad de tener un feudo con David Flair en un momento dado. No fue como con una lucha 5 estrellas, pero trabajaba bien. David Flair fue muy humilde siempre con él, siempre lo trató bien. Daphne de igual manera, a quien le enseñó a hacer tornado DDTs y diferentes tipos de movidas mientras practicaban todo el tiempo. Así que solamente cosas positivas para David Flair. You, after that, WCW was sold in 2001. You were released a little bit earlier.
A little bit before, yeah.
Yeah, I assume because of the economical situation of the company.
Yeah.
But why did WCW, okay, they were so successful. They won each week, every time they had this incredible roster. The ratings were still high compared to what pro wrestling is today. Why do you think WCW at that one point went out of business? I mean, under your opinion, you were there for 2 years. You experienced everything. Why did they went out of business?
From what I heard, this is as a company, they were doing good ratings compared to wrestling of today and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I heard that with the AOL, Warner, whatever, the merger, it was more of an issue of them not wanting wrestling. It was costing too much money and it wasn't a good investment. That's what I was led to believe. It was more of it wasn't something that was within WCW's control. It was more the network or TNT, Turner, and that whole conglomeration not wanting wrestling anymore.
So I'm going to translate that to Spanish. Le pregunto por qué motivo WCW se fue a la quiebra o se fue de la industria si estaban tan constantemente bien, los ratings, ellos estaban ganando, etcétera, etcétera. Me dice que es que en aquel momento dado, la televisora principal, el Turner Broadcasting System en aquel momento dado, simplemente no quería lucha libre, no quería nada que ver con lucha libre, les costaba demasiado dinero producirlo para lo que le estaban sacando y simplemente decidieron echarlo a un lado, por eso la empresa termina vendiéndose.
And prior to WWE or WWF at that time, Eric Bischoff had arranged to purchase WCW with a company called Fusion, and he was supposed to take it over. The only problem was there was no network. TNT, TBS didn't want wrestling anymore, so it made no sense to purchase a wrestling company when the network didn't want it.
So I'm going to translate this incredible fact because I didn't know that part regarding Eric Bischoff wanting to buy the company. So Eric Bischoff, Crowbar menciona que intentó comprar WCW a finales ya con una empresa llamada Fusion, pero en aquel momento dado el problema era que las televisoras no querían lucha libre. Ya tenías a WWF en aquel lado y para eso era suficiente. Entonces, ni TBS, ni TNT, ni ninguna de las cadenas del Turner Broadcasting System querían nada que ver con esto. Así que Bischoff pudo haberla comprado, que yo no sabía ese detalle. Y nos acabamos de entrar aquí, porque yo estoy casi seguro que casi ninguno de ustedes tampoco lo sabía. Let's talk about the creative process. You know, what happened behind the scene in WCW, the producers and everything. How was the creative process in WCW? How they treated you? I mean, they put 3 title belts on you.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. Vince Russo came up with the Crowbar idea, and he, so I was basically going to be the crazy of Flair, and I was going to do the majority of the wrestling. And he gave me a lot of, it was Vince Russo, Ed Ferrara, and Bill Banks. They came up with the Crowbar idea, but there was also, I had a lot of help from Terry Taylor, Kevin Sullivan, and a lot of people offer opinions. Arn Anderson as well would give me opinions on what I could do. But the main idea came from Vince Russo. And it was great because he told me basically what he wanted, but he gave me a lot of free license to steer the character where I wanted to go. And he enabled me to just have a white canvas, a clean canvas to just create what I wanted. And I came up with these weird facial expressions and weird tics and all kinds of wild stuff. And he would give me feedback back and forth. But he gave me a lot of freedom to be this crazy character. Sometimes it was more evil, and other times it was more crazy. And that made a lot of fun. And nothing was wrong because we were crazy. So it made it a wide range of being crazy mean to crazy funny, and everywhere in between. They would give us ideas. They would tell us what we wanted, but they actually gave me a lot of freedom. They gave the group a lot of freedom to do what we wanted.
So I'm going to translate that to Spanish. En aquel momento del proceso creativo, pues sabemos que estaba encargado Vince Russo de aquel asunto, y Vince Russo fue quien le dio el nombre de Crowbar, quien le dio este personaje por primera vez en su carrera, con todos estos tics que movía la cabeza, y a veces simplemente estaba un poquito más loco, a veces era más violento, tenía de todo un poco, pero su experiencia con la empresa en cuanto al proceso creativo simplemente fue excelente. Let's fast forward a little bit in time, maybe 2 years in time. You were part as well of the original version of TNA in 2002, yeah. Then 2003, and 2013 you came back for one night. How was your experience while working with TNA? I mean, you were in WWE before, well, WWF at that point. You were on ECW, you were on WCW, and now you are on the other mainstream company of the Jarretts at that point. How do you felt?
So that started off, and it was really cool. We had a really cool group. It was James Mitchell, Malice, Wolfie. I think his name was Slash. Wolfie D was Slash. And we were the New Church. And I thought we looked pretty cool. We were this dark faction, cool, evil music, doing wild, crazy stuff. TNA was a new company at that time. And they basically said, we need to move down here. We can't fly you in. So they wanted me to move to Nashville. But at the same time, they were flying a lot of other guys in. So to me personally, professionally, I'm saying if they're not willing to fly me in, I'm probably not as valuable to them as other people. Yeah. On my side, after WCW and WWA, I did some tours overseas. I had taken a job as an administrator in a physical therapy facility. I had purchased a house. I had gotten engaged. And there was also a lot of wrestling on the East Coast, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. It was a hotbed of wrestling. You could work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and do 3 shows a weekend. If they were close enough, you could do 4 and do a double shot. And as much as I loved that faction in TNA, I asked them if they could fly me in, and I would work with them on price if they could work around my schedule. But they said no. And as much as I thought that group was really cool. I loved being a part of it, but I had to make the adult decision to say no. I had a great job up here. Yeah. I could still wrestle 3 times on a weekend. I had just bought a house, and this was a fledgling company who already expressed that I'm not worth flying in. So in my mind, I'm not that valuable, so I could be let go at any time. I'm not going to sell my house. I'm not going to quit this job. I'm not going to leave the independent shows. And maybe at a later date, if they see some value, maybe I would go back. And it never really happened for a long term. It was just shots here and there. So I loved the time there. It was maybe 2-3 weeks, maybe. Had some fun matches. I thought the group was really cool looking, but I had to make the very adult decision where, no, I can't do this, and I'll be full-time physical therapist, and I'm gonna have to be a part-time weekend wrestler again. It was tough because the fan in me wanted to go, but there's being a fan, and then you got to do what's real and what's right for you and your family.
It was the wisest decision at that moment. Let me translate that to Spanish. Crowbar fue parte también de TNA, la versión original, y le ofrecieron ser parte de la empresa de manera permanente, pero para eso tenía que moverse a Nashville. ¿Por qué tenía que moverse a Nashville? Porque ahí era que estaban los centros y los headquarters de esta empresa de TNA. Posteriormente, él ya había comprado una casa, ya él tenía su trabajo, ya él se había graduado, tenía una facilidad de terapia física, y pues mudarse a Nashville implicaba mover a toda su familia, vender su casa, dejar su trabajo como terapista física, dejar sus bookings independientes en la costa este, que ya los estaba trabajando y le iba muy bien, pues para irse a TNA, que realmente no era algo seguro, que simplemente lo podían utilizar muy bien por un periodo de tiempo, pero como no era un luchador tan importante en el roster como tal vez lo hubiese sido el mismo Jeff Jarrett, pues la realidad es que no valió la pena y tomó la decisión adulta. El fanático en él y la persona que ama la industria quería ir, pero el padre de familia tuvo que tomar la decisión de quedarse en aquel momento dado. You've been active, man, for 29 freaking years inside the pro wrestling industry. Next year it'll be 30, but you're still active in the independent circuit. You've been, as I mentioned, WWF, ECW, WCW, TNA. You've been everywhere. So you're probably the best person to answer the next question. What do you think the pro wrestling industry needs at this point to attract a bigger fan base compared to what it was the days before, I mean, the 90s or the 2000s?
Okay. Just my opinion. My opinion. And once again, old school, current, whatever, biggest fan going. I watch all the modern wrestling because I still do wrestle. I enjoy wrestling. So I watch all the modern wrestling, what's on, to be proficient. I'm a bigger guy compared to a lot of the talents. When I broke in the early 90s, I was one of the smaller guys in the land of giants. So it's shifted from big guys to smaller, fit guys that are very athletic. But I watched the current product, so I know what these guys are doing. So if I have to work with one of these guys, what I don't want is for them to have to say, I'm working with the veteran guy. I'll tone it down so that, it looks good and I take care of him. I don't want that. I want that guy to say, yeah, I'm working with Crowbar. He could do all my shit and it's going to be great and it's going to look awesome. And I still love doing that. I do cardio 7 days a week for an hour. I do my yoga. I can do the new stuff. But back to your question. When I watch wrestling, I like 93 to like 97 WCW, WWF. I always bring up the ideal person in my mind. Go back to old Lord Steven Regal, okay? He would come out, he would have the cape on. He would have that band music from England, that very regal, royal-sounding band music. Once in a while, he would have a white wig on. He had the attendant, Sir William, with the umbrella. But he played the part. He looked great. It fit. But when all that came off, you saw a great worked match. You saw incredible wrestling. For me, as a fan, as Chris Ford the fan, not the professional, as Chris Ford the fan, I loved watching that because you got all the character and hoopla of wrestling. But when it came off, you saw a very technical, great match. And I say this about today's style too. The athleticism is at a level never before seen. You got flipping 3 corkscrews, and but this is it too. Some of these things I have to rewind for my brain to process what this guy did. Back in when I watched it as a teenager, the biggest thing was Scorpio doing the 1.5, the splash.
450.
Your eye could register it, your brain could register it, and you knew what it was. When I see these corkscrewy, I can't even process how the guy's turning. I know he's jumping, and I know he's landing on the guy, and it's incredibly athletic. It's insanely athletic. But I do think there's less of what I call the fun stuff, the characters selling, some funny stuff. But what I think is, and it's working, AEW, for example, they have their very strong fan base. They're very passionate. And I'm in physical therapy. I have my own business. I see hundreds of people a week, and they'll talk wrestling with me. And the older people all say, it's just not the same. It's, I can't get into it. It's not the same. I think if you go back to when Nitro first started, when it went to maybe like 2 hours or even 3 hours, you had your big top guys on top, and they did a more slow paced match, but they were the name guys, bigger guys, whatever. But you also had the luchadors. You had the cruiserweights. You had a bunch of great tag teams who looked like tag teams. They matched. They were uniform tag teams. And then they would also bring guys in from the independents. And you would see a guy like a Rick Fuller or a Rochester Roadblock. You would see these guys that you would know from the independent scene. So no matter what kind of fan you were, there was something for you. Right now is with the luchadors. You don't like the luchadors? Okay, Hulk Hogan is coming up next. You don't like Hulk Hogan? Okay, we got Eddie Guerrero next. There was something for everybody, where now I think the entire show is just incredible athletes doing incredible stuff. But I think they've lost the older generation. Maybe they don't want that fan base. I don't know. But I think if you offer something that they can appreciate, if one of those guys are going through the channels and they see something that looks like what they watch, they might stay and watch. I think a guy like Ricky Starks is doing it right. He does great stuff. He knows how to work that. He knows how to base and work with that wild style. But his style, he takes his time. He's a character. You hate him. He's such an arrogant. Oh, he's terrible. He gets you into what's going on. His strikes look good. And he goes at a pace, I think, that the newer fans can appreciate, but I think the older guys can relate to it. Am I talking too much? Because
no,
I know you have to translate this. I know. Do you want me to stop, or you want me?
You can continue. You can continue. I'm processing this information. Okay. It's good for me. It's good for the fans as well.
Yeah, and I like Eddie Kingston. He goes in there. He's not going to do a bunch of fancy stuff, but his strikes look real. When he gets hit and he sells, especially this week, I took notice. They zoomed in on his face. His face. He's an actor. He looks great, and I think that connects with the people at home. When you watch an Eddie Kingston match, even when it's with a guy that does wild athletic stuff, he slows them down to his pace. They still get to do what they like to do, but Eddie makes it make sense, and he looks so good doing it. I love watching Eddie Kingston. My character will bury him online. As a fan, I love watching Eddie Kingston, and he really makes it enjoyable. That's just what I think. I think you need a little bit, not the entire show, because old Nitro, you had cruisers, Lucha, all kinds of stuff. You could have those athletic matches, but I think you need matches that the older generation can relate to, and you might pull some of these fans back in addition to your younger demographic fan base.
This has been one of the best arguments I've had so far. I mean, I've had Bret Hart, I have Kurt Angle, Daniel Bryan, Rob Van Dam, many people, and this has been so far one of the most structured arguments I've heard. So I need to translate this to Spanish. Le preguntamos qué necesita hacer la industria de la lucha libre para volver a traer el público que tenías antes y traer más público. Porque en general hay que traer más público a la industria. Está bajando, en excepción de México, todo el mundo pues está bajando. Y él menciona algo bien importante. Anteriormente eran actores, personajes. Tenías a Steven Regal, a Lord Steven Regal con su peluca blanca, con su capa constantemente, arrogancia, pero cuando entraba al cuadrilátero era un señor luchador lo que usted veía. También tenías anteriormente a personajes como el mismo Crowbar, como el resto de las personas. Y entonces tenías un poco de todo. Tú tenías a Eddie Guerrero en el show, tenías al mismo L.A. Park, ahora La Parca en aquel momento dado, y muchísimos para tener los mexicanos o los latinos estilo lucha libre. Tenías los cruiserweights como Dean Malenko, tenías gente de todo tipo, pero tenías los estelares. Tú tenías un Goldberg en el programa, tú tenías un Chris Jericho en aquel momento dado también en el programa, tú tenías el mismo Sting, Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, personajes que eran heavyweights, tenía personajes que eran lightweight, personajes cruiserweight, tenía de todos los pesos, todo el mundo tenía un propósito, todo el mundo hacía algo. Entonces, actualmente la industria, por lo menos en su opinión, es más mostrar quién es más atlético que quién. Entonces, ese corkscrew que daba 1000 vueltas, que en aquel momento dado era tu Core Scorpion que lo podía hacer, que daba el de la vuelta y media, pero actualmente todo el mundo hace 1000 movidas y eso está excelente, está vistoso, está bonito. Pero ¿qué nos deja entonces el resto de la imaginación? ¿Cuántas vueltas vamos a dar en la próxima? Esa parte se la estoy añadiendo yo, no la dijo él, pero dando un poquito hacia adelante. Compara entonces y tomo ejemplo de la lucha libre de hoy a Absolute Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks puede hacer exactamente lo que todos están haciendo, pero tiene un personaje, tiene un propósito, gana odio, es un tipo que sabe hacer lo que está haciendo. Eddie Kingston, la expresión facial en Eddie Kingston es un actor, como él menciona. Los golpes de Eddie Kingston se ven bonitos desde el lado de acá constantemente y no es lo mismo que podemos ver en el resto de las personas. Hay veces que se enfocan más no en el personaje, no en atraer al público y no en trabajar para el público, sino en trabajar para los mismos luchadores, trabajar como parte de la industria y más enfocado en el atleticismo que en el resto de las historias, y al menos esa es su opinión. Necesitamos más historias, necesitamos más personajes, necesitamos darle un poquito a la audiencia que ya no está consumiendo de ese old school pro wrestling que le encantaba. No todo el show, un poco, a little bit, and that will be perfect for every one of us, including me.
Like I said, a lot of veterans will say, you know, they ask them, what's wrong with today's, and the new kids suck. They don't know what they're doing. They do not suck. These kids are incredible athletes. And all they need to do is just fine tune some of the smaller stuff. And also they would last a lot longer, less injury prone, stuff like that. But to say this new generation sucks, you can't. They're the most athletic wrestlers that have ever been produced right now. I just think as a fan, you would bring in the older crowd if you took some more aspects of the old school. You can't go back to Ultimate Warrior with things dangling off him. You can't go back to tugboats, not like that, but definitely characters. I thought Steve Regal was a believable character. He was arrogant. It was a little campy with the attendant, but it worked. And it was, wrestling needs some bullshit. You need some funny stuff. You know, you need some of that too. And that's just it. But these guys are great athletes. I just think if you want to pull in that older generation, you need a little bit of something that they can relate to without bringing the show down. You can still do, like, I also think I'm a big fan of ECW hardcore, and I call that the not like the Rob Van Dam, Jerry Lynn, Sabu hardcore, where they use weapons, but they did a lot of wrestling too. You know, I think that's always been for me, a great mix. And I like to implement it with myself, not overdoing the weapons, but use a chair here or there if it makes sense, but also don't lose the wrestling. And now I'm rambling. I'm sorry.
No, it is great because of the fact that you are okay, perfect. You're comparing what was athletic back then, like Rob Van Dam, for example, or the same Sabu, that had that violent side of him that could work hardcore, that could work athletic, but could work with a gimmick, with a character, that was an actor, that could do any sort of wrestling. And
I saw a match. I saw a match in Michigan. I was on a card. Sabu worked against Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Imagine that. And he did it.
And the match looked good?
It was solid. Didn't have, you know, you're not going to get a 5-star. You're just not going to. But I'm sure for a casual fan on that poster, wow, Sabu against Hacksaw, that's cool. And it was a passable, solid match, you know?
Awesome. Let me go that in Spanish again. Menciona que en aquel momento habían talentos como Rob Van Dam, como Sabu, como Jerry Lynn, que podían hacer todo tipo de cosas. Que los mejores atletas, claro, están ahora mismo, son atletas fenomenales, son excelentes, pero como todo, le falta un poquito de personaje, le falta, siempre hay algo que falta que pudiera mejorarse porque siempre hay espacio para mejorar. Y menciona algo muy interesante, en esos macheos extraños, él de camino a Michigan vio que Sabu se enfrentó a Hacksaw Jim Duggan. ¿Cómo funcionó eso? No sabemos, pero simplemente para que vean que Sabu puede hacerle todo tipo de lucha. Gracias a Reconstruction Wear por llevar el podcast a ustedes el día de hoy. Simplemente visítenlo en su website previamente mencionado, visítenlo en sus redes sociales. Crowbar, man, it's been such an honor to have you today as our guest. Before we go, I wanted to ask something more. Sure. Obviously, WCW Crowbar for everyone in Twitter, WCW Crowbar para todos en Twitter, pueden buscarlo, ahí está activo constantemente hablando de lucha y pueden ver lo que está haciendo actualmente. What's Crowbar doing these days? I mean, you mentioned physical therapy facility, you're still active in pro wrestling today. Yeah. After 29 years, you're doing so many stuff, you're keeping busy. So where can fans can see your product currently? I mean, you are active in the pro wrestling industry.
Right now, I'm on Twitter at WCW Crowbar. Prior to the pandemic, I had done 2 shows with Ring of Honor. I would actually, the return there, and that was going well. And pandemic hits, and because I work in healthcare, I can't be traveling, doing shows all over the place. I have to make sure that I'm virus free. I'm dealing with patient each day. But as restrictions get lifted, we hope, as more people get the vaccine, yada yada yada. I train regularly. I bought a bunch of mats. I've been doing it with the whole pandemic. My wife is also a pro wrestler. We met through wrestling, so we trained together, and we have mats. We've been keeping up on it, and I'm very eager to get back into a wrestling ring. I haven't done anything since February. But I've been keeping myself in the shape so that when the time does come, I'm ready. And if you check out the Twitter, I've been doing a lot of promos with this new character, and it's just been a lot of fun.
So, a todos los fanáticos, WCW Crowbar en Twitter, ahí pueden ver dónde está activo. Estuvo antes de esto en Ring of Honor, pero pues por la pandemia él es un terapista físico, tiene sus propias facilidades, es un profesional al igual que su esposa, y pues tiene que mantenerse libre del COVID porque está trabajando con pacientes constantemente. Esperemos que una vez la pandemia finalice, todo pueda ser mejor y poder verlo nuevamente en acción en diferentes lugares. Sir, as mentioned, more than honored to have you here as our guest. Always wishing you the best of luck, not only in the pro wrestling industry.
Thank you.
No, the opposite. Thank you, man. Always wishing you the best of luck, not only in the pro wrestling industry, but in your personal life, as well as with your wife, with your physical therapy facility and everything. And thank you so much. Honored to have you here.
It was my honor. Thank you so much.